These are the C-130 planes the Coast Guard is using to transport migrants back and forth from Texas to California under orders from the Trump administration. We saw them Monday at the Naval Air Station, North Island. The Coast Guard has been transporting migrants since late January and handing them off to the Air Force to conduct international deportation flights. Some of the Air Force C-17 jets have been taking off from MCAS Miramar.
This administration has really called for an unprecedented use of military assets to include the Coast Guard.
John Sandweg is the former acting director of ICE under the Obama administration. He questions the use of military assets when border crossings and deportations still remain relatively low.
You don't need to use it right now, given the numbers we have. But I do think that a lot of this is optics. I think a lot of this is a desire by agency heads, too, to get in the game, so to speak, given that this has become such a priority within the administration.
Sandweg says the Coast Guard does play a role in immigration enforcement, but typically at sea.
Coast Guard does have border security as part of its mission, especially in an AOR in a sector like San Diego, where you have Tonga boats, as you know, coming up from Mexico up the coast and landing all the way up past North County in San Diego. But of course, this mission is radically different. I mean, this is really a stretch for the Coast Guard to be running air transport, picking up migrants in Texas and flying them to the stage them for military deportation flights.
He points out ICE already has a $1 billion budget to pay a private contractor to transport immigrants. And when the Coast Guard gets involved, those flights come out of the agency's existing budget.
So when you start telling the FBI you're now getting in the immigration game, when you start telling the ATF, when you start telling the Coast Guard you're now going to be doing military transport flights, those are funds that were dedicated to some other purpose.
The Coast Guard falls under the Department of Homeland Security, not the Department of Defense. President Trump fired the head of the Coast Guard shortly after his inauguration. On Shelter Island, David Gottfredson, CBS 8.
Thank you, David. And we asked the Coast Guard to provide statistics about the number of flights and the number of migrants it has transported from San Diego. The agency's spokesperson did not respond to our email.